The road surface that we're examining in this video is gravel, which for our purposes we could define as either sand, mud, pebbles, or loose grit. Before we have a look at each of the real-life clips to follow, which demonstrates the different hazards posed by the loose road surface types, it's important for us to understand the forces involved where the tires make contact with the road surface. So there are basically two forces: the longitudinal force, which is the movement going either forwards or backwards, or the lateral force, which is the movement from side to side when we turn the steering wheel. To try and minimize the risk involved on a loose or slippery road surface, we want to try and reduce these two road forces. So when it comes to longitudinal force, we want to try and reduce either the acceleration of the wheels or the braking involved. When it comes to the lateral forces, we want to try and reduce as much as possible turning the steering wheel. So we want to try and keep as straight a line as possible. So bear that in mind as we go through each of these real-life clips. In the first real-life clip, we'll see that there's a mud patch that covers the surface of the road. Now notice this driver ahead, he sees the dark mud patch ahead of him and he brakes before the patch. But very importantly, before going through that patch of mud, he releases the brake. So while he's going through that patch of mud, he doesn't brake at all. There's braking. But now notice he's gone through that patch of mud without braking. So the advantage of that is there's no force applied to the tires, that longitudinal force. There's no force applied due to braking. However, for the camera, when he goes through the mud patch, and we don't know for sure because we can only see the video, we can't see what's happening in the vehicle, but very likely the camera put on his brakes when he was going through this mud patch. And notice what the consequences are. The car's induced into a slide and he lands up on the other side of the road. So just to repeat the point, we want to try and reduce the longitudinal force either through not braking or not accelerating, or the lateral force by not turning our steering wheel and trying to keep a straight line. In the next real-life clip, we'll see that there's a vehicle that passes the camera on the left-hand side. There's a bit of a mud patch over here. Now, the car's induced into a slide for a different reason. So let's have a look at what that is. So you can see the car's going to approach the mud patch. Now, I'm just going to advance the video frame by frame. And notice that as the car starts going through the patch, the left side of the car is raised or lifted. So there you can see it's a bit of an angle now, which indicates that this mud patch is not evenly spread across the road. Further into the central part of the road, the patch is actually higher, so the mud is higher or thicker, and then it thins out as it spreads across the road here. Now, because of that, as the left tires of the vehicle go through the thicker mud patch, there's more resistance applied to the tires. So more resistance on this side of the vehicle, the left side, as opposed to the right side. And so as a natural consequence, wherever you've got more resistance, the force then tries to pull the car in that direction. So because there's more resistance due to the thicker mud, the car now is induced into the slide and is pulled off to the left. So here we have a very common scenario where we've got a tarred road surface with a gravel shoulder or verge. We've got to be extremely cautious when our vehicle moves off the tarred section so that Only 2 of the wheels are on the tar and 2 of the wheels are on the gravel, because the same principle applies as in the previous video, where you've got more resistance that the tar offers to the wheels that are on the tar, as opposed to less resistance on the gravel section that the wheels are on. So here we see an oncoming vehicle trying to avoid this vehicle that's overtaking. But as he does so, he's forced off the road, and so 2 of his wheels stay on the tar section while 2 of the wheels go onto the gravel. More resistance on the tar side, and as we said, wherever there's more resistance, the car is pulled in that direction. So we'll see the oncoming vehicle now, as it hits this section of the road, more resistance on the tar, it's pulled across the road in front of the camera. So just be extremely cautious of that. If we're going over onto a gravel shoulder and we've still got 2 of the wheels on the tar, it's very easy for our car now to be induced into a slide. So we've got to act extremely cautious. Here we've got a sand road, and if you study the video, you can use the keyboard shortcuts, as I mentioned on one of the pages in the website. But as you study the video, notice this vehicle as it's traveling along the sand road, that it sees a section on that sand road that it slightly tries to avoid. So the vehicle turns slightly to its right, but that starts inducing a slide. And then, as is very often the case, drivers overcorrect. So then he turns more to the left side to try and overcorrect, and he lands up sliding across the road. So it's very subtle. There he goes to the right, and now overcorrects, comes to the left-hand side. So this is the lateral force that we were speaking about earlier. When you're traveling on a loose or a very slippery surface, such as a sand road is, we want to try and keep that straight line. If we're going to be turning our steering wheel, it's got to be very, very slightly. We can't turn our steering wheel too much of an angle, or that angle of attack. Otherwise, the car's definitely going to go into a slide, and especially at higher speeds. What we have here is a sand patch across the road, which makes it even more of a slippery surface than had it just been a sand road, because where you've got sand or pebbles on a hard tarred surface, that almost acts like ball bearings when it comes to the tire's contact with the road surface. So that's the one hazard here, is the sand on a tarred surface makes it even slipperier. But notice that the sand is also on a slight curve. And so because of that, more lateral force is applied to the car's tires because of having to try and follow that curve. And so this spells disaster for a vehicle, as we see is the case with the camera here. This last clip is just to have a look at grit, or a loose surface that exists on the shoulder of a road. We can see this is a bit of a sandy area. But as vehicles travel along this section of the road, here we can see 2 trucks. And for larger vehicles, in their wake, they kick whatever loose grit or sand might be on the road off to the side of the road. So you'll find that the shoulder section has got a lot more of the loose grit or gravel or sand. And so in a scenario such as this, if we move onto the shoulder of the road, we've got to be extremely cautious, because that's a lot slipperier. Now, that's what I want to demonstrate in this video, not so much this vehicle, which does go onto the shoulder section, and then even further onto the sandy section, and so is induced into a slide. That's not so much what I want to focus on, but just to show you the loose grit that exists on the shoulder section of the road. So there, moving off onto the shoulder, and notice the dust that the vehicle starts to kick up, which just is an indicator of the sand and the loose grit that exists there. So be careful in moving off onto the shoulder, because invariably it's a lot slipperier surface, and especially when it comes to a bend in the road, because even more grit or gravel is kicked onto the shoulder section of the road where there's a bend in the road. So it'll be the outer section of the bend, because as a vehicle takes that bend due to centrifugal force, it actually kicks more grit and gravel onto the outer section of that bend. So where there's a shoulder on the outer bend of a road, there it's extremely slippery. So more grit and gravel, but also because having to take that curve, the tire has to endure lateral forces, which makes it slippery as well. And so we've got to be cautious of that. I do have two separate pages on the website that deal with longitudinal and lateral forces, so you can go along and have a look at that, because it's important to understand these technical concepts, because as we can visualize these forces involved, it will help us to try and reduce those forces in order to keep stability on a loose road surface. I'll put the links to those pages in the description section of this video below. Please like, subscribe, and get notified.